to go along those lines, and I think this is important, is it was taught to the appropriate group. So, and what I mean by that is the students had to match me and I had to match the students. There's so many times over the years where someone would want to come into the camp, and early on I made the mistake, right? Not the mistake, but I said, okay, this doesn't work. And it was a frustrating, because it's frustrating. So if we're going to do a high-end skills camp and there's teaching time and space and it's just a higher level of teaching, and you have someone comes in and it's like they're not very good at hockey and their commitment level isn't really high, it doesn't work, right? And more important, it's the commitment level. So what I learned early was that um, how I look at hockey and how some people look at hockey are going to be totally different. So a dad that says, "Oh, it'd be good if you came with you, just get better because of the stuff that you do." No, not really, because it's demanding. It's I'm going to expect some things from him, and I'm not. I don't want to start at this level. I want to start here. So what happens is if you are mixed up, or matched up with the wrong level, then it doesn't work. And it could be said the other way, right? If your teaching is only to here and you want to teach junior pro college players, but you only have this and you don't understand the game enough, then you're just going to be nothing but frustrated. You won't have success. So you have to make sure that you're teaching the appropriate level, right? So like, let's just say an NHL coach was going to come in as a guest coach for a camp one week or whatever for Bantam or 15-year-old kids. It may not work because it might be like, this is boring. Like, what do we do in skill? Like, it might not even make sense to them, right? So just because you're an NHL coach doesn't mean that you're going to be a good 15-year-old skills guy or teach the game to 15-year-olds, vice versa, right? So, anyways, that was a huge thing for me. Is that okay? I knew that if I was going to have success in my business, 7-year-old kids with snot all over their face, so it was probably not the kid that I want. That was going to be a good match for me. Nothing wrong with the kid, but for me, I needed a 12-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid that can play a little bit of hockey that I can work with. And then that matches a lot better.
Yeah, that was one of the things I wrote down is matching your group.
Yeah.
And
But a
then,
piece of frustration if you don't.
well, because the other thing too, like parents expect. I had this conversation on another consult a few weeks ago with a parent. She was saying that, oh, I brought my kid to this skating coach who was supposed to be the best guy ever, and he worked in the NHL, and it was expensive and whatever. My kid hated it. It's like, well, first of all, if it's super expensive when they're super young, it's not really necessary. But that's besides the point. If you always say you don't need a heart surgeon if you have a cough. That's not what you need. If you can, if you want to do that, if it works for you and whatever, that's fine. But it's not necessary. And I think a lot of times people will jump the gun to try to get a certain type of teacher or a certain reputation of teacher who may not be appropriate. Like for you, I get people all the time that ask, "Can Coach Andy do shooting with my kid off the ice and stuff?" It's like that's not what you need. That's not what's appropriate, you know. And then on the flip side of that too, as the teacher, you kind of mentioned a few minutes ago, working or finding a purpose with a group that's not exactly maybe your optimal or your preference or whatever. And there's something about that I want to talk about too, is kind of figuring out how to work within the constraints that you have or work within certain limitations. So, for example, just to take an example that's not hockey, if you're a teacher, I know a lot of teachers, and there's complaints about the classroom where like there's tons of limitations on teachers and what they can do because that's the rules. That's what the school board says, etc. So that's tough. So here's your set of constraints and limitations, and you have to figure out how to come up with a positive strategy within these limitations. So as a coach, as a teacher, regardless of your environment, that will be present no matter what the group is, and figuring out how to balance your approach depending on those constraints. So how did you find for you, if you had to bring it down to, well, like here's a good example. So when we do our shooting camps, it's younger kids and there's a wide range of skill from, let's say, a 10-year-old A player to a 14-year-old AAA player. So what in your approach will change in terms of the teaching for that hour and a half, as opposed to if you had 16-year-old AAA kids or something?
Well, let's mix up the group. Let's say in that group we have a mixture of everything. So with the kids that are 16 or 15 years old that shoot the puck well, it's tweaking, right? It's tweaking little things. And if I go down to, if that same group had a 12-year-old that was not like just not a really good shooter or whatever, it would be just getting them to the basics. and my verbiage with both of them would be just a little bit different.
That's what I was gonna get. So like, are you softening your approach? Are your expectations not so high? Do you focus more on like goof around and make sure they have a little bit of fun with it versus the 16-year-old where it's like, no, stop, do it again. It's this,
Yeah,
and being a little more
with a little
firm.
humor, like sometimes
Yeah,
too, but yeah, for sure. Like when you're talking to a 16-year-old, it might be like a simple thing like, okay, like this is good. Hands need to be a little bit. You got to get that here. Push down the stick, more on the toe. Turn the hips, turn the hips, turn the hips, because those are all things that they can do, and might be able to even show them, right? Whereas a kid, a student that's a little bit younger and is just not very good at like a simple, like let's say one time with the stick down, like a real simple, just slap it in the net. It's just about just little things, and then you're encouraging when they do something well, and then say, "Oh, I might ask a question." I said, where did you hit the puck on that one? What part of the blade? Like, and I get them to be more interested and totally make it more fun, but of course, still trying to get results. But it's like it's not the same because the 16, 15-year-old guy that practices all the time and is actually good at shooting has a feel for everything, right? Like a sort of feel that you can tweak little things. Whereas the other guy might be like, yeah, but you're holding your stick way too low or way too high, or you're not bending your knees. Like those are the simple things, right? So you have to keep it like very basic and like have them get some success with the basic stuff. And I don't beat them down. Like that's the thing. It's like because it would be easy to honestly, I'm going to say it like in a rude way, but if you have a kid that can't shoot the puck and he just wants to flip it or whatever, and you start going like, you don't get it, kid's stupid or kid's an idiot. It's like, no, he just you're asking him to do too much. So you just have to know that audience. That's all.
I want to pull the thread of like the concept of patience into this. So as a teacher, coach, whatever, or even as a parent, like with your own kid, watching them develop, how has your patience tolerance how has it changed over time? How do you change it from that group versus an older group? And patience meaning like how much you're willing to tolerate, like how much, for example, if I have a group of 7-year-olds on the ice, I already know going in they just want to mess around. So how much am I going to freak out if they don't follow my instructions versus
What you're focused on in those situations that they're not being disruptive idiots.
yes.
You just want them to listen and try their best.
Right. So even if you're trying to teach and they're not grasping what you're doing, that's not really the point necessarily. It's like they just need to get the reps of what you're trying to show them.
Yeah, that's true. And it's also if you're taking 7-year-olds and you have to explain outside of here's what we're doing and one or two things, then you've said too much, right? As a seven to like or a low level player or a young player, low level or young player period. There's only so many words and so many coaching cues you should really use because if you start trying to really teach, like good luck,
Yeah.
good luck.
I was having a consult last week with the coach, and he was. You could just tell talking to him like he really cares about being a coach. Like he cares, and that's great. And I could sense the frustration when he was describing the situation to me of, I have this plan and I want things to go this way, or whatever. But then it was along these lines of just something always happens. Like something gets in the way. Like he had a kid come in and he had his jersey on backwards. Another kid, like so you're dealing with this stuff.
Well,
And
okay, so that right there
yeah,
says a lot.
yes.
It
Well,
doesn't
this is
say anything about a bad kid or what it says is that probably young.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, right.
I
Or
mean,
like
if I have my pants on backwards, I should know,
yeah, right.
right?
Or like the kids showing up late, or these types of things where he's like it disrupts the flow. It's hard to keep. And I'm like, well, of course. So as the coach for that level, there has to be tolerance built into the system here because that is going to happen no matter it doesn't matter how much you care or try to teach. That level has to come with a bit of play in the joints for that type of stuff because when the kid is however old they were 9, 10, 8, whatever, look, the parents are trying to get them there after work. They're going to be late. They're rushing
Could
and the
happen.
kid's going to come on and one of his skates is loose and now someone has to go out tighten his skate for him. Your coaches, they're just dads that are coming out to help and they need to you have to explain to them what's going on just as much as the kids. It's not like go and go, And so there's certain things that you have to build into your what would the word be? Whatever, like the meter of patience that you have for the situation, you have to have some of that built in depending on the level. Now as you get up, if they are older, more mature, better, are supposed to be at a certain level where maybe the coach Andy expectations are now appropriate and they're missing on that, well now you can get on them quick about it and you can actually be a little bit more firm, frustrated, and let them know earlier because that is now no longer acceptable at the level that they're at. Does that kind of make sense? Is that kind of fair?
Dude, 100%. Like, it's part of that is expectations. I mean, if a coach laid out the expectations, if you had a young group like you were talking about, the expectations were that you're going to be ready 10 minutes early. You're going to be when I speak, you listen, and you have all these expectations, and there's seven. Maybe the parents on that team would say, oh, "Okay, this is
Yeah,
not,
this guy needs
this
to
doesn't
relax.
even match. I don't get off work till 4 or 5. Like this, like it doesn't even. I can't do it." So the expectations don't match uh, the. There's a word out there. The group that you're teaching, right? So those expectations are something, and then what was the last part you were saying?
How did you
What I was
handle
sorry, I'll go
go?
back. So the other thing I was going to say is like we have to look at, and I think you have this in your notes somewhere later, but we have to look at, what do you expect? Like expectations are fine, but what do you expect? Like, I mean, I've got a 18-year-old kid, I've got a 26 and a 29 or a 30, whatever she is, kid that if they lived at home, they still wouldn't clean the room probably. No, no, I'm being honest, right? Because it's not theirs. If Charlie comes back in the summertime, like we snap. Can you just hang your shit up? But why does he do it with the Guelph Storm? Because you have to. It's your job. It's being professional. But when you're around here, so what you do, there's a certain age and a certain thing that's important to people at certain times. And when he comes here to hang up his equipment, it's like, dude, like you just turned 18 the other day. You're 18. You can't figure this out. No, he's a kid. He's a kid. And I'm not saying like, so some parents would say, yeah, but I make their kid. And that's good. It's good. But when you're not there, maybe you've instilled it so well to them and that's good. But there's whatever, there's leaky somewhere else. So like expecting the younger that they get, the less important a lot of things are. That is important to you. So the last thing on that is that it's great that you care as a coach, but it's more important that the kids know how much you care about them. And then they might do a little bit more.